Good afternoon, and welcome to the first Sabbath series, which is held this Sabbath on the fourth Sabbath. And the reason for that is we are entering into the camp meeting season. Our very first regional conference camp meeting will be the Central States Conference camp meeting on next Sabbath, which is the first Sabbath. We want to be supportive of and not in conflict with our regional conferences. And so our first Sabbath schedule will be a little different for the next couple of months. We'll tell you about that in a minute. With me are two very special young ladies, two of my very favorite young adults in the world. Ms. Rebekah Bell Jackson, doctoral degree candidate and educator from Howard University, who I've had the privilege of knowing since she was a baby, and Mrs. Courtney Campbell, who I've also had the privilege of knowing before she was a baby because she's my daughter. She is a church school teacher at F.H. Jenkins Preparatory, where she was a student as well. She's filling in for Pastor Hoy, who has taken a call to Southwest region. We appreciate her ministry, Pastor Hoy. If you're looking at this, we wish you well as you take leave of us to pastor in Southwest. We have a special program today called Adventist Faces in High Places, and we want to get right to it. But before we do that, we want to ask God's blessing on our program today. So, Ms. Campbell, if you pray for us, please.
Gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you so much for this opportunity that we have in front of us, Lord, to hear from some of the people that you are using on a more public stage, Lord, to further your work, Lord, and to represent you. We ask that you would guide our conversation, Lord. We ask that you be with our listeners, Lord, and that someone would be touched by this program. We thank you again for this opportunity and the technology that makes it possible. In Jesus' name I pray and thank you. Amen.
All right, Ms. Jackson, who do we have today?
Today we have Elder Phipps, and rather than me try to sum up all of his accomplishments, we are going to have an introductory video that will play and introduce him to our viewing audience.
Wintley Phipps is many things: a minister, a Grammy-nominated gospel singer, and a leader determined to make a difference. He's counseled presidents and celebrities like Oprah Winfrey, but his greatest passion is helping at-risk children to dream. And he's one of the most inspiring people I've ever met. Wintley Phipps was a teenager when he realized he was blessed with a set of pipes. He had a calling.
When I was about 15 and a half years old, my voice changed. And I made a decision that I wanted to dedicate my life and this gift to inspiring people, motivating people, encouraging people. And that's what I did. Amazing grace.
Wintley sang out, and the world listened.
The sound.
His motto, "You don't have to compromise to be recognized," proved true. Wintley reached the highest pinnacles, toured with the Graham Crusades, sang for Pope John Paul II, and took center stage celebrating our nation's leaders. So you've sung in front of 6 presidents and counting. Have you advised any of them spiritually?
Yes, I have.
Was President Clinton one of them?
President Clinton was
What can you
one.
tell me about that? Because that was a dark time for him.
During the Monica Lewinsky story, we watched him aging, it seemed, in front of our very eyes. And in prayer, God impressed me, send him a message.
Wintley sent a Bible passage about David drowning in disapproval, full of sin.
He wrote out the first speech that he gave to the American people, where he finally came clean and said, I did sin. And I was invited to the East Room to be there to hear him give this speech. I realized that I had been used to help nudge him to this moment. He sent me a handwritten note after. He said, Wintley, I received your message about Psalm 69. I appreciate your wise counsel, your prayers. I need them all right now. 'Twas grace that brought me
Based in Maryland for most of his life, Wintley jokes he's the only artist more likely to be on C-SPAN than anywhere else. But there is one YouTube clip that transcends. A video of Wintley explaining and singing Amazing Grace.
Did you know just about all Negro spirituals are written on the black notes of the piano? The slaves didn't come to America with do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That was not their scale. The melody, strangely enough, sounds like a West African sorrow chant. And the man who wrote it, the words, was John Newton. He happened to be the captain of a slave ship.
Where Newton most likely heard that haunting melody.
Your version of Amazing Grace is incredible and has, I think, garnered over 20 million cumulative views online.
Yes.
What do you attest that to?
It still speaks to the slave in us. Because it really doesn't matter what color we are or where we're from. All of us are slaves to something.
You've sung for so many famous people and have preached for thousands. I guess that wasn't enough for you.
Yeah. I found myself singing one day in a prison. As I was meeting the young men, I started to feel like I was on a black college campus, except it was prison. So many of these young men looked like my sons. And a dream was born in my heart. You are loved by adults. You are loved by people who think you're awesome.
Wintley founded the U.S. Dream Academy, a nationwide tutoring and mentoring program for kids who are at risk or have parents behind bars. His work has kept thousands of children out of jail.
You have to increase the density of caring, loving adults in the life orbit of kids when their parents become incarcerated. That is the most important thing.
Wintley has kept his nonprofit alive for 20 years thanks to the generosity of the friends he's met along the way. Like the young woman struggling with her career who came to Wintley for guidance.
We talked and prayed, and after praying with her, I said, you know, before you go, God has impressed me to tell you He's going to bless you and give you an opportunity to speak to millions of people. She said, you really think God would do that for me? And it was Oprah Winfrey.
Oh my gosh.
Decades later, as Wintley himself struggled to raise funds for his program, he received a little something from his old friend Oprah.
When I opened it up, she had put in a check for $1.2 million. Wow. But behind that envelope, I saw another envelope peek out. I opened it up. It had another check for $1.2 million. And behind that envelope was another envelope.
In all, Oprah had donated $4 million to keep his cause alive.
I once was lost.
For everything that you've done, everything that you've achieved, how does that song speak to you?
What it says to me is that I can be restored. The melody of that song, if it lifted them from dark experiences, if so many of my ancestors singing that song could make it, there's no excuse.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much. What a powerful introduction. Let's bring Elder Phipps on. Thank you so much, Elder Phipps, for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Oh, Elder Phipps, that video was so inspirational. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from, and your journey up to this point?
Wow. Well, I was born in Trinidad in the Caribbean. And at the age of 10, we immigrated to Montreal, Canada. So I grew up in Canada. I went from palm trees to ice, joined a hockey team. So that's the equivalent of Jamaican bobsled, you know. And I was there until God led me from Canada to Huntsville, Alabama, to Oakwood College, and that's kind of how my journey went.
Well, Pastor Phipps, you have been pastoring the same church, Palm Bay Seventh-day Adventist Church, for 20 years.
Yes.
That is highly unusual at
Yes.
an Adventist church. What has it been like to pastor the same church for 20 years?
Well, in many ways, it is the most grueling thing I've ever done. And then in many ways, it's the most beautiful and rewarding thing I've ever done. I use the word grueling because when you have to speak to the same group of people every week, and you have to be fresh and you have to be relevant, it's not like you can do 5 years of sermons and they move you and you can start over on those same 5 years of sermons. You have to keep coming up. So I've had to dig and research, and which has turned out to be a blessing for my own spiritual growth. And then it's been beautiful because I have had the opportunity to see people transformed and people grow. We think of conversion as being, come down the aisle, but let me tell you something. Sometimes it takes years and sometimes it takes decades for people to actually transform. And so I see the same people now who were my age when I'm 67 years old. When I got there 20 years ago, they were 67. And now I'm seeing them in their 80s and standing over the graves,
Right.
burying those same people, but with a joy, because I have seen a change. I've seen them become more Christ-like. And there's nothing, let me tell you, in ministry, there's nothing greater than to stand over the grave of someone you know has done their very best to resemble, reflect, and reveal the character of Christ in their lives.
Amen.
Thank you, Elder Phipps. Just as I'm hearing you talk, I'm amazed. I marvel at how much energy you must have, because in addition to pastoring full time, the video mentions that you also have the Dream Academy. So can you tell us a little bit about the Dream Academy and how it came to be, where it's located, things along that line?
Well, I would say, first of all, I could not do what I do without the blessing, support, and prayers of the members of my church, the Palm Bay Adventist Church. They actually see me not just as the pastor of the church, but the pastor from their church. They see me as being able to go into parts of the world and parts of society that most pastors can't get to go. And I got to tell you, were it not for their love and support, I couldn't do what I do. Now, I will tell you this: there's a speech, though, that I give to all of my churches who I pastored. All of my tenures have been long, 7-10 years, and this one 20. So I've really pastored 3 or 4 churches in this 40 years I've pastored. But I give them a little speech when I get there. I said, if you see a beautiful woman and you ask her to marry you, to sit her down the morning after the first honeymoon night and say, okay, now, baby, all that you used to do that made you so attractive to me, I want you to stop it. I said, I don't think that'd be wise. And then I said, when you heard there was this marriage about to take place between my ministry and the ministry of this church, to sit me down after the honeymoon and say, now, all that you used to do that made you so attractive to us, we want you to stop it. I said, I don't think that'd be wise. And then I would say to them, if you just let me do whatever God calls me to do, let me go wherever he calls me to go, I believe my ministry will flourish beyond my wildest dreams. And this church, the ministry of this church, will blossom beyond our wildest dreams. And whenever the churches have covenanted together with me in this way, and when they've said, okay, Pastor, we're with you, and then they say one more thing, if there's any slack, we'll pick it up. If you're out of town and somebody needs to be visited, we'll do it. And so I couldn't do what I do without the support of the church.
So you have the Dream Academy, and this is your nonprofit.
Yes.
How is it funded? How much does it cost to operate?
Well, the Dream Academy you know, one of the challenges in ministry for us is that we don't do a lot of ministry outside of the walls. And when God allowed me to begin to see young Black men in prison, some of them, by the way, one of every 3 Black men between the ages of 18 and 30 in the United States of America are now in prison or supervised by the court system of the United States of America, one of every 3. And when I went into the prisons to sing, and I would see, wow, so many of these young men, they're there for 10, 20 years. And while they're there, their children, the average age is 8 years of age, and their children are there while they're gone for 10 years, from 8 to 18. That's a prescription for disaster. And so I started the Dream Academy to break that cycle of intergenerational incarceration, because about 70% of all the children in America who go to prison come from the children of those who are in prison now. And so through no fault of their own. And I started it on a wing and a prayer, and began to leverage all of the friendships and relationships that I've had. But I got the biggest boost, not just from President Clinton, one of the blessings is that I've been able to navigate between Democrats and Republicans. And it takes a lot of diplomacy to do that. One day I was singing at this big function in Washington where President Clinton spoke. And the same night I had to rush across town and sing at this big Republican function. When I got there, I announced that I had come from singing for the President of the United States. And there was this boo and rumbling that went through the audience. I said, wait a minute. I said, I always go where people really need the Lord. And there was this polite applause. And then I said, and that's why I'm here. We have about 7 centers across the United States. We've mentored and tutored over 10,000 children, keeping many of them out of prison. It's been one of the most rewarding things, but it costs about $3 or $4 million a year to operate, with 40 something employees across the country, and that will keep you up at night. That's the greatest challenge. The most agonizing praying I do is around raising funding to keep this program going.
Elder Phipps, you talked about something that's very rare in politics today, the ability to work both sides of the aisle. Yeah. And I remember getting a text from you a couple of weeks ago. Well, I mean, it's a couple of months ago, maybe, where you said your friend Orrin Hatch had died.
Yes.
I started off in college as a political science major, so
okay.
I've kind of kept up with politics, and I know Orrin Hatch, very conservative.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't get a whole lot of votes in our audience today.
Yeah.
You were heartbroken. You said, my friend,
yes, he was,
has died. Yeah. And then you shared with me that he was one of your major supporters of Dream Academy.
Right.
So you just have a remarkable ability to reach across the aisle, and we want to affirm that. Now, I did. You and I, because you and I have had a number of discussions, and one of the things you shared with me is the kind of discoveries you've made in running Dream Academy and in your ministry regarding the transition away from the printed page and hard copy books. Yes. And you and I've talked at length about the implications that has not only for education and evangelism. I know you're real passionate about that. Yes. So without making me pull your coattail, kind of share what you've discovered.
Well, first of all, for almost 600 years, the printed page was the way we stored information and communicated information. And from its early days of adoption, the printed page became what I call a groundbreaking, supra-dominant technology. And it seemed irreplaceable. There was no alternative, it seemed, to the printed page. But then along came what I call digital paper, liquid paper, devices in the palm of their hands. Whether you're at a funeral, whether you're wherever you go today, people are not holding out printed pages. They've got a device in the palm of their hands. And as a consequence, the printed page is no longer the primary way we store information or communicate information. And my friend, since the printed page is going away, and many, for our young people, it's already gone away, they're not reading. They're not reading. And reading is at the foundation of knowledge acquisition and character development. Jesus was able to develop character to battle the enemy because, as Ellen White says, he read and studied the scriptures. When he was tempted, you remember what he would say? Let me tell you what I read. That's what he says. It is written. Turn these stones into bread. Man shall not live by bread alone. Where did he get that? He got that because he studied the book of Deuteronomy. And finally, I will tell you the thing that has me really shook up is a study was just printed by the Forbes magazine, done by the Barbara Bush Foundation, that revealed that 54% of all Americans between the ages of 16 and 74 now read below a 6th grade level. Most adult Americans cannot read as well as an 11-year-old child. Now, the implications for that are serious. Remember, we're talking about knowledge acquisition. We're talking about character development. Well, what does it mean for the church? 90% of all of our Bibles and our Bible study materials are printed above a 6th grade level. So we have to figure out a way, and I shouldn't say we have to figure out a way. God has blessed me and given me a new concept that we will be introducing to move reading, or I should say to add to the printed page, because remember, when the printed page goes away, you've got to have a platform to continue reading. And we've developed and we're launching a whole new approach to reading called video reading. Video reading, where people will be able to see text, hear audio, see images in a reading format. And we don't know of any other platform right now. When the printed page goes away, and I'll remember it's already gone away for most young people between the ages of 12 and 15. Most young people between the ages of 12 and 15 read from a printed page 5 to 10 minutes a day, but they look at images and video on the screen 4 to 6 hours a day. And so you pray for us. We're launching something that is unbelievably new and novel and effective. And finally, I'll give me one more point. I'll tell you why it's effective. Did you know that when you look at a word and when you look at a picture, your mind processes that 60,000 times more than when you read a word. And when you see a word, get this now, this is really, really important. When you see a word and an image, we remember 10% of what we read, we remember 20% of what we hear, but we remember 80% of what we see. And your eyes, when we do video reading, when we've tested it, your eyes process those words that come at them faster. 15 milliseconds, every 15 milliseconds, your eye can see a new word and get information from it or images. But to read from one line, to move your eyes from one word to another, it takes 200 milliseconds. 200 milliseconds. So when you're doing video reading, you can absorb more information more quickly. But if you're just doing it reading from word to word, your eyes can only move from word to word 200 milliseconds from word to word. I've said a lot, but I hope it makes sense to you. You pray for us. Video reading is the future of reading.
I know how passionate you are about that, and you very well may be on. You very well may be on to something groundbreaking here. Thank you for sharing with us.
Yes.
But you have more than any other Adventist I know. You and Barry Black minister to people in spaces where that the average person cannot do it. And so we're going to talk about the United States presidents. But besides the presidents, tell us about some of the celebrities that you either sung for or ministered to.
Whoa. Well, the range is unbelievable. I will tell you this. Just a couple of names come to my mind that were just precious to me. One of them was Alex Haley. I first heard Alex Haley when I was at Oakwood, starstruck hearing him talk about creating this book Roots and Kunta Kinte. We heard him before it was popular, and it was like, wow. And when it became popular, it blew our minds that we had heard this story told by the very man. But Alex Haley and I became friends. I actually sang at his funeral, and Alex Haley and I would talk. He would call. He used to go on ships to freighter ships to all parts of the world, and that's where he got the solitude to write. But he would call me from Colombia, South America, and so Alex Haley was one of those. One of the things too, and I'm glad you said that, and I'll answer your question this way. I didn't get to march during the civil rights struggle. I wasn't old enough. I'm born in 55, right? But as I grew older, God gave me the opportunity to minister in song to so many of the civil rights leaders and icons, and that I cherish too. Shirley Chisholm was a dear friend. When we saw each other, we'd wrap our arms around each other. You may not know that when Ralph Abernathy had a heart attack, I was the one at his bedside singing hymns at the Johns Hopkins Hospital. Or when Rosa Parks was celebrating her 77th birthday at Kennedy Center, I was the one who serenaded her to close the program. And there are just so many civil rights icons that I think that's one I will cherish. Mrs. King and so many others.
Okay, so there had to be, though, that kind of first person the kind of first celebrity that kind of opened up the door in terms of giving you exposure and all. So is there like a first cause in terms of your celebrity ministry?
Well, I think the first person that did the most to open up the opportunities for me to be heard, and one of the reasons, again, is think about this for a moment. The music industry has emasculated the male bass baritone solo singing voice. There are no bass baritone hip hop singers. And so it's one of the reasons that I am unique in that sense. So I wouldn't get the opportunities from major record companies or to push a voice like mine, right? But God blessed me with a friendship with a man by the name of Jesse Jackson. And Jesse Jackson was the one who did more than anybody else to open up the doors for me to be heard, not only by the civil rights movement, but all across America. When it was Run, Jesse, Run, and when he gave his speech at the Democratic Convention in 1984, I remember, and by the way, there's a story behind that I don't have time to tell you, but it almost didn't happen because they canceled everything that was supposed to come before Jesse that night. And I was on that list that was supposed to sing just before he spoke. And when he finished the speech, everybody was clapping for, it seemed like 15 minutes. And Jesse kind of moseyed over to me and said, "Hey, man," he's clapping. He said, "What happened? You got the music?" I said, "I think so." He said, "Go on, hit it." And I walked up to that microphone scared to death because I said, Are they going to play the tape? Do I have to sing a cappella? What in the world am I going to do? You in 50 million people in front of you. And then I heard the music and just ordinary people. And I was able to sing Ordinary People. And Jesse, I would say Jesse was the one. He would call me and say, hey, what you doing tomorrow? I can't think of anything. Come go to Africa with me. And I would be on the plane, the president of Nigeria's jet, or come go to Africa with me. But Jesse, I'm a little tired. No, come. I'm working on something. Okay, Jesse. And I get on the plane, and here I am standing in the crowd that welcomes Nelson Mandela when he came out of prison, because Jesse Jackson said, come go to Africa with me.
Wow, that's fascinating. You just gave me an idea for a possible career change, Elder Phipps. Ms. Jackson and Mrs. Campbell, I don't know what you think about me being a baritone hip hop. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about Elder Phipps.
Can I tell you one more funny story? Because I would, my voice is different, and early in the music industry, they didn't know where to put me. They couldn't put me in the music store. They couldn't put me with the Five Blind Boys of Alabama. They couldn't put me with the hardcore gospel, and I wasn't white, so they couldn't put me in the white section. But when I traveled, I would travel with the Hawkins family and sing on their programs, and Shirley Caesar, because again, Jesse, So one day I was doing a concert with the Hawkins, and I walked into the restroom, and there were a couple guys there, and one said, hey man, who's on this concert tonight? The other one said, hey, this guy Phipps? Another one said, oh yeah. In that guy that does gospel opera? So if you don't make it in bass baritone hip hop, brother, I got another category for you.
Oh my!
I think you should probably keep your day job, Pastor Edmond.
I would concur. I would definitely concur.
But Pastor Phipps, when presidents come for you to, how do they send them, and how many presidents have you had the opportunity to sing for?
Well, it has been miraculous. I don't have a manager or an agent that calls and connects any of these opportunities. The phone rings, and it's really divine appointments. When the phone rings and it's the same, I'm calling for President Jimmy Carter. I didn't do that. And so I give God all the glory. God does it in a way that you can't take the credit. Elder E.C. Ward used to say, any credit that is, or any glory, he said, that is due at the foot of the cross, if you touch it, you're a dead man. and I really do believe that. So I give God all the glory. But I've sung, or I have either had breakfast or lunch or dinner or sit at the same table with 7 of the last 8 presidents of the United States of America, which is a very rare privilege. And I'll let you guess who the 8th one was that I have not sat at the table with and ministered to. It didn't work out because I'm not hooking him up, right? So God did that too. All right.
Well, we won't mention that particular one, but Elder Phipps, you do have an insight that most people will never get to have. And so I'm just wondering, if I call a president's name, if you can give me a description, just a quick sentence description of each president.
Oh, okay.
And the first one I was thinking about was President Carter.
Yes. President Carter, a lot of people don't realize this, was scholastically and intellectually probably the smartest president we've seen in our lifetime. President Jimmy Carter is a nuclear physicist. This man is absolutely incredibly brilliant. But his problem was he would read everything that came across his desk. And after a while, that information would paralyze you. President Nixon said there comes a time when you have to push all that information away and make decisions on instinct. But of course, some of his instincts were flawed, right? And I'll tell you about a couple of more, and then you can ask others if you wish. But President Reagan, on the other hand, would see all that information on his desk and pat it. In other words, he would never let all that information paralyze him. The most charismatic president I've ever known. I mean, the kind of president when he walks into the room, everything stops. The room lights up when this man walks in the room, and that is Bill Clinton. President Bill Clinton has a charisma that is palpable. You feel it when he walks in the room. You almost turn. Somebody just came in this room. That's the kind of president he was. President Obama, on the other hand, President Obama was probably the most scholarly, brilliant, methodical, sharp, well-thinking president that we've known. Interestingly enough, though, one day I had a meeting with President George W. Bush, and I said to him, Mr. President, I said, we're grateful for the grants we've received from your administration. I said, but we're having a really tough time getting philanthropists to give significantly to organizations that are run by people of color. And he said, Wintley, I understand exactly what you're talking about. I said, you do? He said, yeah. He said, when I was governor of Texas, I would fund these important inner city initiatives, but I too found it difficult to get the philanthropists to give significantly. And he did like this to his aide who came running to his side. He said, I want to have a conference where I bring together social entrepreneurs like Wintley and leading corporate leaders and foundations to the same table so we can see what kind of help we can get for them. And I'm chairing the meeting. The president of the United States calls a meeting on your behalf. He doesn't delegate it. He says, I'm chairing the meeting. And he did. He called these folks. Across from me was the president of Johnson & Johnson and other very powerful people. And then he said, Wintley, I want you to go first. I want you to tell them why I brought them here. And I began to tell of this opportunity to help children whose parents are incarcerated. And right away, the president saw some of them were getting defensive and they were raising their hands saying, Mr. President, we're doing a lot of other good things. And he said, yeah, but I had my White House do some research. And less than 5% of all the philanthropic giving in America goes to the disadvantaged. And you may not know, but of the $70 billion that are given by foundations to charities in America, only 3% of all the charitable giving in America goes to organizations that are run by people of color. And so that was a very special, and I've had a lot of interaction with President George W. Bush as well.
That's amazing. After a thankfully brief hiatus, you're back with this current president, President Biden. Do you have any insight into President Biden?
Yes, we were together not too long ago for a couple of different events, actually. One where he dedicated the Martin Luther King, or celebrated the dedication of the Martin Luther King statue. I'd actually just flown in from Ghana. I was with the president of Ghana, President Addo. We had a wonderful, Ghana is an amazing place to visit if you've never been there. I was there singing in the dungeons where they held the slaves. 60% of all the slaves that came from Africa came through Ghana, and so it's a special place. And then we were with him again for the funeral of General Colin Powell. And I'm grateful that we've had his leadership there. This country really needed, I think, some healing, and he's brought that kind of spirit to the country.
Thank you.
If you could select just one of these presidents, which one do you think you were most able to minister to and to impact?
It would be President Clinton. You heard in the actually the introduction, the video. I had an amazing moment, and let me tell you quickly how we met. in 1990, I was singing in Birmingham, Alabama. I got ready to go to the dais. The security people started running back and forth. They said the governor's coming, so I straightened up my tie and brushed on my suit. And they brought in Bill Clinton. I didn't know who he was. Nobody knew who he was then. He hadn't even announced he was running for president. So since I was in Birmingham, they said the governor's coming. I assumed he was the governor of Alabama. So when they put him beside me, I went into this long story with him of how much I love Alabama, what a great state Alabama is. And I noticed he's puzzled. Why am I extolling the virtues of Alabama? And when they made the introductions, that's when it dawned on me, oh, no, there's the governor of Arkansas, not Alabama. And so that's how our meeting began. But when he became president, I sang for his first prayer breakfast as president. And he sent me a note how much he was blessed by the music. And he signed it with thanks, Bill Clinton, governor of Alabama. And so I have that really precious memento. But let me tell you one incredible story about President Clinton. You remember when Russia opened up for the first time for evangelical work? It was in your lifetime. For many, many years, Russia was not accessible for the Christian church to work in. But when the opportunity came, a lot of Christian denominations and churches began pouring into Russia to do evangelism. So just imagine every denomination you could think of, all of a sudden, they're in Russia and they got American money. They're wealthy churches. So they're buying up large buildings, large churches. And the Russian Orthodox Church, they became angry because they didn't have the money to buy up all of these churches and buy these facilities. So they went to their parliament, which is called the Russian Duma, and they persuaded the Russian parliament to pass a law that set a date. After this date, no more foreigners, no more Americans were going to be allowed to stay and do evangelical work in Russia. And the bill was passed by the Russian Duma, the Russian parliament. It was then sent to President Yeltsin to sign. Just like a bill passes in America, it goes to the president's desk to sign. And it was on President Yeltsin's desk to sign. And I was asked with some other friends to try to get to President Clinton to help. President Clinton, we were able to get to him. He picked up, again, the friendship, he picked up the telephone and called President Yeltsin and asked President Yeltsin, please do not sign that bill. And President Yeltsin did not sign the bill. And that's how Christian churches, the Adventist church, and a lot of other religious organizations were able to continue to do work in Russia. So the relationships made that possible.
That's just amazing. Also in the video, another very influential person that you have a relationship is Miss Oprah Winfrey. And the story that was just mentioned in the video was exciting. Can you give us any more information? Like, how did you meet her? How have you been able to minister to her? And how has she been able to help in your ministry?
Yes. Well, it was 41 years ago when I was singing in Baltimore, Maryland, as I came down off the platform. And she tapped me on the shoulder and said, I feel like I can talk to you. You got time to talk to me? You know, my wife blessed me. And I give her the credit for it, because when I was at Oakwood, dating her, and I was 18 years old, she's 19 years old. She doesn't mind me telling you. She pulled me aside one day and she said, you know, I want to talk to you about something. I said, sure. She said, I noticed you treat my pretty girlfriends better than you treat my girlfriends who are not so pretty. And if you want to be my friend, you're going to have to learn how to treat them all the same. And so I began to learn how to treat everybody and every person with respect. So when Oprah came up to me, she didn't look like billions. She didn't look like millions. All she was just a young Black reporter who said, do you have time to talk to me? So when she came by the home, we talked and prayed. And that's when God impressed me. And he wants me to tell you, he's going to bless you. And she's never forgotten it. And she has been the single most generous supporter of our ministry. But let me tell you something that I don't often tell people. She called me one day weeping because she had bought the rights to Toni Morrison's book, Beloved. And she was going to turn it into a movie and make it into a movie and star in the movie herself. And she said she thought she had found the right producer, And they were having a great meeting, and all of a sudden he turned to her and said, "But Oprah, I got to tell you, I don't see you playing the lead role in the movie." And she was devastated, you know. She called, she said, "Am I holding, am I being selfish, Wintley, holding this part for myself? What should I do?" I said, "Oprah, look, let's talk after your show." She was holding up the taping of her show. I said, "Just let's talk after the show." I ran out and I bought the book. And as I was going through it, I saw the storyline was about a black girl in slavery who had a baby from her white slave master. And when she heard the master was coming to get the baby, she took the baby out into the field with a knife and slit the baby's throat and kills the baby. And the story of Beloved is how this disembodied ghost of the baby haunts the house and comes back reincarnated in the body of a young woman to have sex with the mother's boyfriend out of revenge and confront the mother about what she did. So when I read this as an Adventist pastor, I know I'm looking at spiritualism, coming back from the dead. So I got on the phone and I said, "Oprah, you can't do this. Not like this." I said, "You're so powerful, whatever you do will be a blow for truth or a blow against truth. And truth is an anvil that has worn out many hammers. God told me to tell you, this is not going to succeed, not like this." And I said, "Change the story a little bit. Don't let the baby die. Let somebody find the baby, save the baby, raise the baby, so that when it comes back, it's not coming back from the dead." Well, she was not happy with me. And literally for 7 years, we did not speak.
Oh my.
We did not speak. And I was heartbroken, How do you mess up a friendship like that? You know what I mean? But when Senator Orrin Hatch confronted me and said, "Hey, who's helping you with your Dream Academy and your Dream for the Kids?" I said, "I have a few people here." And they said, "No, I'm going to help you." And he put together a dinner, our first fundraising dinner, that raised $1.6 million because of Senator Hatch. And he brought Mrs. Clinton together. And so my first dinner, all 100 United States senators signed on to be a member of my dinner committee. And Orrin Hatch and Hillary Clinton together, they co-hosted the dinner. Well, when it aired, one of Oprah Winfrey's producers happened to be watching and called me and said, "Sir, we don't know if you know it, but Oprah gives an award to people like you, and we think you need to be the next recipient of the award." I said, "Wait a minute. There's some history between us, and we have not spoken for many years." And then I told the lady, and she said, the story. And she said, "Most of the people who work for Oprah would never tell her what she needs to hear. You told her the truth as you understood it. You were born out to be right. It was the worst failure of her career. And I'm telling you," she said, "let's go on with the award." And I walked out on Oprah's show. I was nervous because, we hadn't spoken. But they said, "Don't worry. We've talked to her about this. She's really excited that you're here." And I can show you the video of that reuniting between the both of us. She hadn't even seen me bald at the time, so she was screaming and rubbing my head because she had never seen me bald. And during a break in the show, I said, "Oprah, look how God has blessed you, like I told you he would all these years ago." And she said, "Wintley, you were right all along, and you were right on that movie, Beloved, too." And it was then that our relationship became stronger than ever. All the millions that Oprah has given has been after we did not talk for 7 years.
Wow.
And so it is nothing but God, because let me tell you, when people fall out, they don't come back stronger. Those relationships don't come back stronger. So I give God the praise. I give God the glory, because I told the truth to a friend. And there have been other instances where I have shared with her. And finally, I'll tell you one day, and she tells the story, so I don't mind telling it. I sent her a message, and she tells the audience, she says, "I'm riding in my car, I'm with Gail, and I get this email from Wintley." And I said, "Oh no, oh no, oh no." And Gail says, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" She says, "I got this email from Wintley." And Gail, she said, "Well, what does it say?" And then she says to the audience, "Oprah, the Lord has told me to tell you, you're about to go through a season of duplicity, treachery, and betrayal. But not to worry, no weapon formed against you will prosper." So she called me, "Wintley, what does this mean?" I said, "Oprah, I don't know. I just feel impressed on God to share this to you." And then she says to her audience, Wouldn't you know it? 4 days after that, 4 days later, the FBI came into my office to tell me that one of my executives was taping all of our conversations and was threatening to blackmail me. And so with those kinds of friendship moments, that's what it's ministry. So I guess this is what I'm trying to say. When you minister to people and it's authentic and they sense that God is using you, you have a friend for life.
Well, thank you, Elder Phipps, for sharing that. I know you're in Canada.
Yes.
So thank you for giving. You're there for your 50th class reunion. So thank you for giving us this time. I know you had to schedule some things around this appointment. So thank you, Ms. Campbell. How are we going to close out our time with Elder Phipps?
I want to personally thank you, Elder Phipps. This has just been so inspirational, and I thought I knew quite a bit about you, having heard you since I was born, but I've gotten to know so much more, so thank you for sharing. And I know that you have a video, but there is a video, and we'll be able to be blessed by the gift that God has given you in song as we close our time with you. So thank you so much.
It's been my honor, my pleasure, and as you know, give God all the glory. There's none of these people that I've met, none of these doors that have been opened, none of these places that I've gone, did any human being pick up the phone and make it happen. God did it, and I give him all the praise and glory.
When I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands hast made, I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe display. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. And when I think of God his Son not sparing, gave him to die, I scarce can take it in, that on the cross my burden gladly deadly bearing, he bled and died to take away my sin. When Christ shall come with shout of acclamation to take me home, what joy shall fill my heart, and I shall bow in humble adoration and there proclaim, my God, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. How great, how great, how great, how great thou
My. Let the church say amen. All right, we
Amen.
are ready for our next guest today, Councilwoman Keisha Dorsey from the third district of Metro Council there in Louisville. All right, Council, there you are. There you are. All right, Councilwoman, thank you very much for joining us. Councilwoman Dorsey is from the Magazine Street Seventh-day Adventist Church in Louisville, Kentucky. I am actually Councilwoman in Pensacola, Florida, with another one of your fellow magazine-ites, Dr. Dewan Knight. I am actually doing this from his office. So this is Louisville Magazine Day, one of my very, very favorite churches of all time to visit. And it was in one of my many visits that I got a chance to know your family. Your dad used to bake bread for me, your mom, your uncle, your brother. And I'm just so very proud. Thank you for joining us, Councilwoman Dorsey. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm just a homegrown girl. I will tell you all, I don't know how I got into politics, and even why you guys put me after Wintley Phipps. But in all honesty, it's funny because when I heard the reoccurring theme of the narratives that he was speaking through, it really is this life thing. It is really about your steps being ordered. I did not go to school for this. I see one of my Oakwoodites on here with me, Miss Rebekah. I just knew I was going to be a doctor, y'all. I like that's what God had for me. I wouldn't change a thing about how he has taken my life's journey. It is never, it's never been a plan of mine to be where I am at, but I literally can look back over my life and say it was nothing but the Lord leading me every step of the way. I literally became the youngest and the first female millennial elected in Louisville, Kentucky. And it was really one of those, I call it Rosa Parks moments, where you get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And it was, I literally remember sitting in a community meeting And the incumbent at that time, it was funny. She said, "File your little $20 and meet me at the polls." You don't challenge a millennial. We're entitled. I'm gonna take you up on that. And people, asked me how did I do it. I told them this good old thing right here called Google got me through the whole first campaign. And was recently reelected. I asked Daddy Edmonds. I said, well, I call him Daddy Edmonds, y'all. I've known Daddy Edmonds since Camp Thunderbird. I'm a product of the Adventist Church, not just magazine. Went to Emma Elementary School, went to Oakwood, went to Camp Thunderbird. So I'm a product of an Adventist village. But all that to say, Googled the whole thing, just got reelected, 90% of the vote. And so literally when I tell you all the footprints of Jesus and being used as a vessel, and sometimes I had to close my mouth because there's some things I want to say. But I have to allow myself to be used by him. So we'll start there.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman Dorsey. Tell us about the involvement that you have. You were talking about your Adventist village, and we want to know about your involvement in your local church. What offices have you held that may have prepared you or that you are currently holding even now?
Oh, like any millennial and the ones that are sitting here, all of them. All of them, everything. you get called in to count, from counting money to sitting in the baby room to making food for the babies, AYS leader, choir director, praise team director. Literally, it was funny. We were talking one day. I got ready to have a debate against my opponent, and someone asked me who trained me. I was like, "Oh, Bible Bowl." Like, play with me if you would, but I can remember where this stuff comes from. And so, or I was thinking, different jingles. People were like, I had my whole little tagline: "Vote KD for D3." And somebody said, "Who did you pay to come up with that?" Oh, we had jingle competition. So, if you ask what role I had, that the old saying, my parents are old school. They drug us to church. They drug us to church. So there wasn't a role that I don't think that I did not hold, or if there was a role available, a committee. Like the last thing I left as lead of was hospitality, y'all. Me in the kitchen, and so. I think that's the beautiful thing about the church. It literally, it's not just an entity where you go to. If you do it right, it's an entity that really prepares leadership. And I think about, so often we talk about school not preparing kids, or kids getting to the point where, they graduate and it's like, there's that gap. I saw something where they're teaching a class on adulting. I'm like, you should have just went to church because you would have got the class. But literally, it taught you leadership, whether you wanted to learn it or not. So I remember coming back from Oakwood, and they were like, "Oh, you don't have children, and you're not married. Why don't you be the AYS leader? Like, you got time." And so that's how I became the AYS leader. And literally, you all, the church will mature you if you allow it to. It's not about carrying a whole bunch of duties and being overburdened. It really is about maturing you into a leader to serve. And when you look back on it, you realize that you are constantly being prepared, not just to serve the church, but to serve the world. And the church is the tool that's used to refine that. So I would say everything. And I'm probably ducking from the pastor because I'm sitting here thinking, don't call me back to nothing else right now. I just want to sing and praise team or sit in the pew for a little bit. But yeah, a little bit of everything. Literally, the last roles I left were hospitality and minister of music.
So how did working for the church prepare you to work for city government?
People. If you can work for the church, you can work for city government. And the difference is when you work for the church, you learn all kind of personalities. And the best thing I will tell you is when you learn to work for the church, especially when most people are working for free, you learn that there is a way to motivate and to be a servant leader that encourages and empowers people to get up and do jobs that they're not getting paid for. It's a different type of motivation. When you get into government and you're working with constituents, or you're working with folks who have been doing things one way or another for various administrations, you can't come in and bang the hammer and make people do anything. It really is learning people's personalities, understanding what motivates them. And if you can do that in a volunteer type of setting like the church, where you have a mirage of backgrounds, there's no job descriptions for the church. There's at least job descriptions when you go into the public sector. But when you can learn how to motivate, maneuver, empower people in the church setting, there's really nothing you can't do in the corporate setting. It actually gives you a leg up. So really the church is the base for really understanding people management.
Well,
Now, I know you talked briefly about getting into politics. I'm sorry, I know you talked briefly about getting into politics, but what made you decide? Give us the longer version of why you decided to run for office?
Wow. I had a really unique opportunity. I was able to go very far in my corporate career, and I got to the point where I was very blessed financially. Was offered a job to relocate. My father had just passed the pancreatic cancer. I did not want to leave my mother and leave my hometown. And my father had always talked about the area that we grew up. I live in a primarily African American neighborhood. I always laugh. My father did not graduate from Oakwood, but he made sure we went. We didn't have a choice. We were part of that. This is where you going, not where you want to go, but you're gonna go here for a year and then you get stuck and you love it, right? And so my mother graduated literally from college as we were graduating from high school. So I grew up in a low income area, but as I advanced in my career, I'm thinking I'm getting out of here, right? Um, and my mother said something to me that stuck with me, and she said, "Why would you leave the community that made you?" And I thought, like, I can afford my brand new Lexus. I can buy a house where I want to go. I can get out of this neighborhood, and something about a mother sometimes, y'all. They say the things that she didn't tell me what I couldn't do, right? Because I was gonna pull the mama, I'm grown. But she told me what I needed to hear and what would rub my spirit. And so I decided, I said, well, let me give this a year or two. I decided to stay in Louisville, and I just decided to get involved in the community. And I had this really great background in healthcare. And so I thought, my father had always talked about how this community was overburdened with this plethora of health problems that no one seemed to identify, because it was in a low income area. It's kind of overlooked. And so I used my position at Humana. At that point, I was the VP of Strategic Ops for TRICARE, which is the military arm of Humana. They actually have the whole military contract at that point for the East. And I said, well, let me see if I can pull those resources into my community. And that's really kind of how it started. I was able to do a lot of work with Humana, going into the community. And when I got back from Oakwood, I had the heartbreaking blows of not getting into medical school and didn't know what I was going to do. And a man by the name of Adewale Troutman, who became the president of American Public Health Association. At that time, he was our health director. And he said, little girl, you're not going to sit at home. You're not going to, wallow in misery. He made a phone call. I got into the School of Public Health in 2 days. The application period had passed. And I started working on a project called Unnatural Causes. And it started looking at determinants of health, whether it be social, economic, environmental. And that has taken me to literally where I am today. So you talk about favor. I literally was called and Spit Oaks, which is here the day before Derby, if anybody knows anything about it, with this one of the seventh richest families in the world, the Browns. Christy Brown called me, and she's a founder of something called the Enviro. and they have based their work around determinants of health. And she said, Councilwoman, I've invested millions of dollars into this agency, and you've come along in 4 years and have galvanized an entire community that I have spent the last decade trying to penetrate. How do we partner together? So literally when Wintley Phipps was speaking, I could not do anything but literally sit and think about the fact that when you put him first, everything else happens. It is not about the people. It is about his purpose and what he will accomplish. And when you are unapologetic about the word, and when you are unapologetic about the mission, and when you are unapologetic about what he has put in you, he will take you before anyone. You will either be the king or you will set before them. And so literally that's how everything has unrolled for me. God, involved with or blossomed up from Dr. Troutman, graduated at the top of my class with my master's, was the first African-American intern at the largest hospital system here, subsequently was able to shoot up very quickly at Humana. That credibility allowed me to enter into the political sphere, not because I was interested in politics, but because there were synergies. And then those synergies actually took me into politics. The one story, I love how Wintley told stories. When I was elected, I got a heartbreaking letter from Humana that literally told me I had to choose between this great, mid-six-figure job to going to $48,000 a year for a part-time job as an elected official. You all talk about going into a war room in prayer. I didn't know. And anybody who's graduated from Oakwood knows that you can love Oakwood all you want, and Sally Mae loves you. So I had to figure out what I was going to do, you all, and I decided to literally be in my mom's basement, become a public official, and move forward. Literally today, I'm working on a patent. I have bought my first apartment complex, working on, like they call it, a serial entrepreneur. But the opportunities that have come my way when literally deciding that the mission that Christ put in my heart was more important than any dollar amount, regardless of what I saw in front of me. It didn't make dollars and cents, y'all. It didn't. But to see where I am now, I will tell you, if you put him first, that's all I can say. He literally will. I have mustard seeds. When I got elected, I gave a talk, and I can't even tell you where it came from. The Lord gave it to me, but I literally put mustard seeds in a little container, and I literally clung to the fact that literally he kept saying, if you have the faith of the mustard seed. So I keep mustard seeds with me. They're literally in my office. I keep them with me, and when I have issues, I take them out and I rub them in my fingers, because I sometimes have to remind myself that's all it takes. And literally when I remember and when I feel, and I'm tactile, you all, so that's why I keep it. When I feel how small that mustard seed is, and when I realize that all I have to do is just have that much faith that he'll do the rest, it keeps me centered. So if you walk in Councilwoman Dorsey's office, people always laugh. They think it's seasonings. They're, of course, she's a Black woman, right? So she got salt and pepper and mustard seeds. But I keep a jar of mustard seeds. And it's so funny because I've run into people now that I've been reelected, and they were like, I remember when you gave your first inauguration speech, I got your mustard seeds. And I've kept them because literally that's what's got me this far. Filing, Google, faith, that's it.
Well, tell us a little bit about your first campaign.
So being the youngest person, one, and being female, being African American was a challenge. Coming into office, I heard everything, you all, from she didn't know what she was doing. It was an uphill battle. I didn't even expect to win, you all. It was so funny. I literally would go to work, people laughed at me. My family laughed. I would sleep in my car. I would go to work, come home, change clothes, knock on doors to the sunset, would go back, call the police department, tell them, hey, don't shoot me. I'm out, hanging door hangers at night to tell people, hey, I'm coming back the next day, so people would know to look for me. And then once I finished that, I would go home or sleep in my car for a few hours, go to work, take a shower. I literally ran like that for almost 6 months. I cannot tell you where that energy came from, but there was a fire in my belly. I could not tell you why I was working and running so hard. I was running against a woman who had run for judge 2 other times. She had name recognition. And I just thought, she hired this big fancy campaign consultant. They were raising all this money. I raised less than $5,000. They were. I didn't know what I was. Let me say, when I say I don't know what I was doing, I had Google, I had faith, and I had a plan, and I had people around me. All of a sudden, volunteers were like, we see this girl out every single day. What do you need us to do? It literally became this grassroots coalition that just kind of galvanized and kept running with me. And I looked behind me, and there were so many people behind me. So election day comes, and the heartbreaking thing was I got a letter in the mail, like a mailer, and it said, join, it was my opponent. It was like, join my opponent for the election day celebration as she becomes Councilwoman, and I forget her name now. She's a judge, and we've actually become friends. But it was her election win party. And you all know that it was the first time I had doubt. The whole time I was running, my eyes were stayed on the prize. The first time doubt creeped into my spirit was when I got that mailer about her election day party. I let that stay in my spirit. And this is why I tell y'all, he's so good. Even when you doubt him, he's good. I didn't know. I didn't even think I stood a chance of winning. The polls had closed, and I just knew I had won. I didn't want to look at it. I literally marked it up and said, this is a great learning lesson. I will run campaigns in the future. I've learned a lot. I've met a lot of people. I had the community spirit in me, but I just knew I had won. Like, I was running against a refined system that had been in place for so many years. So I was picking up my yard signs. I'm outside sweating, and the polls had closed. It's like 6:30, and people started coming outside, and they were like, congratulations. I was like, what? And I'm looking at the thing, and I'm like, what are they talking about? So I'm out still about 7:30. And as I'm picking up yard signs, people are coming out. Congratulations. I was so scared. My mama kept calling. I thought she was calling me to, baby, come home, to comfort me. And so finally, my best friend calls, and he's like, where are you at? Everybody's at the house. And I'm like, I'm picking up my yard signs. And he was like, you won. And I'm like, they called the race already? He's like, yeah, you won by 2/3. Y'all weren't even close. I won by 2/3 with $5,000. When you talk about 2 fish, 5 loaves of bread, little becomes much when you place it in the hands of the master. My opponent raised over $100,000. She had the incumbents endorsed. She had all these endorsements. I didn't go to one single interview. They were all on Saturday. I chose not to do political endorsements on the Sabbath. So I didn't get any endorsements. I didn't do any of the big political fundraisers. I didn't have any of the union support because I just ran on my values. And I thought, if this isn't good enough to get me here, it's not meant to be. And what's so funny is, fast forward 4 years, y'all, I was got an invitation from the unions, and they said, well, Councilwoman, we want you to come out, and we you've been a great supporter of the unions. We'd like for you to come out and to do your union endorsement. I said, what's the date? Both days they gave me Saturday. I can't do it. And so I said, I would love to have your endorsement, but I can't do it. And they said, well, unfortunately, if you can't come out and do it, we can't give you all the endorsement. Y'all, I get a call 2 days later saying, congratulations, where can we mail your check? I didn't even show up at the interview. Not only did I get the endorsement, but I got the financial support of the unions. when I tell you, when you stand on his principles and on his word, when you rub them little mustard seeds, get you some, get you some. I cannot tell you, Whitley keeps saying it is nothing but God. And what he said about, was it, did he quote T. Marshall Kelly? He said, you don't take the credit. Don't even touch the credit that belongs to the master. You all, it is literally, it's nothing but being used. That's the only way I can describe it. When Daddy Edmonds called me, I said, me? Because sometimes you forget that he is using you in such a prolific and powerful way, because all you're doing is making yourself available as the vessel. And he's doing all this other stuff, but I'm still Keisha. But to everyone else, I'm Councilwoman Dorsey, or I'm Christy Brown's friend, or you're doing all this with the mayor, and then you're supporting, the guy who's running for senator, or they're asking me, and I'm like, but I'm still Keisha. And literally, you all, it's just being the vessel that he's using. And that's like, I everything will come back to that, because that's the only way I can describe how I've run the first campaign. Everything starts off with a step of faith, sticking to the word. I can't even say Adventism. You all know, because what I tell people when people ask me about Adventism, I just tell them it's the closest thing to the word. That's how I explain it to people. Because people will get into is it a cult? And we heard you're this and you're that, and you don't eat this and you don't eat that. And I'm like, well, the only way I can really help you with it is, if you really want to know what Adventism is, pick up the Bible, and then let's have a conversation about the word. And then I can tell you why I'm Adventist, because it aligns with the word. So don't get caught up on Adventism. If you get in the word with me, you'll understand what this means. And if you don't agree with it, that's fine. But if you agree with the word, we're going to get along. And even if you don't agree with it, guess what? We're still going to get along. Now the Lord's still working on Councilwoman's tongue. But other than that, we can still get along. Pray for me, Pastor, because they're pray for me.
Okay,
sometimes I got to slow down.
Okay, you've kind of answered this already, but I'll ask it again. Have you had anything in your political career besides the Sabbath things you talked about that kind of came in conflict with your faith?
Lots of things.
Give me one. Give me one.
Well, the big one I think about is abortion. And that's a big one now, because we're looking at the Supreme Court, Roe versus Wade. And you all, when I tell you, I had to really think about what that meant as a woman, what that meant as an Adventist, what that meant as a Christian. I struggled with that thing. When I tell you, so many pastors and priests, we know you're Adventist and we know you're pro-life. And I remember getting on the floor and having to cast my vote. And I thought, like, do I say something? Don't I? This is such a controversial issue. And I remember casting my vote for pro-choice. And literally somebody got up and like, you're a Christian. How do you do that? And literally, you all, it was as though there was a voice within me that said, he who was without sin cast the first stone. There is nothing that the Lord has ever made me do. Everything he's given me has been by choice, even the choice to choose him. I will choose him every time. Keisha is pro-life, but I won't infringe a religious belief upon anyone. Choose. I'd rather love you to him. I'd rather show you the way through my light, but I won't force it upon you. And literally, I could see people just turning and looking like, because all of a sudden, even the people, it was like this energy in the room that was so adversarial. And I thought, what's missing is love. Sometimes we get so caught up in, and I still laugh. I said, these are still Pharisee and Sadducee principles, where we're so busy looking at the rules that we forget the root. And so sometimes we're so focused on the rules that we forget the root of everything comes back to love. If I can love you into the truth, if I can love you into preserving the life of something that is precious, that's the goal. But will I condemn you? How dare I pick up a stone? Because there are other things in my life that he's protected me from, or he shielded me from, or he hasn't revealed, that I'm still struggling with. So I can't condemn you if I am still struggling with sin. Yes, there are different levels of them, but we serve the same God and he can address them all. So I'm going to approach this through love. Immediately, the energy in the room changed, and I realized that my voice could do something. And I thought about Moses, because I felt feeble. I'm the youngest one in the room. I'm black, and I'm short, right, compared to a lot of the taller, statuesque men there. And literally, this little short 5 foot woman can come in and calm a spirit in the room. And everyone was thinking, she's gonna vote pro-life, and I vote pro-choice. And I told them, he never makes us do anything. He allows us the choice to choose. And 4 years later, a lady approached me and she said, I was on the side of pro-choice. And she said, I was fighting because, I wanted to have an abortion. And she said, your words convinced me to keep my child. She was so convinced and riled up by people talking, pro-life, that she had never felt the love of what it meant to be pro-life. She never understood that it was a gift, that it was special, and that God had given her something special, and that it was wrapped in love. And the love is a choice. You get to choose it every day, and to feel that energy and to see that one person. And I thought, my God, I for the first time I felt like a pastor. I've never felt that way ever before. And I was like, Lord, is that a star in my crown? Like, I got happy after she said it. But I never realized the power of speaking your voice. Sometimes that's the one thing this job has taught me, is the beauty of prayer, but then narrating what he's given my heart through my war room. And sometimes, you all, the battles that we go through in our war room in prayer are the same battles that people are having themselves. And oftentimes I found myself fearful of articulating what my spiritual battles were. But oftentimes when I articulated those in the forms of votes or speeches about votes, I found that many people were having that same spiritual or moral dilemma. And I was able and am able to minister by having these very articulate dialogues or speeches about how I've arrived to a decision through prayer, supplication, and fasting. And so, when I will tell you, the most beautiful thing, the most rewarding thing about politics has been able to understand that the word is a foundation for government. That's what the Lord has shown me. He has set the foundation for what the kingdom of heaven shall be. And if I am a politician, I one day I got happy just reading, because I thought, wait a minute, I thought I was privileged to have this role, but maybe one day I'll get to heaven and I'll have a political role, because I never looked at the Bible as a political document. But one day the Lord just revealed to me, this is the foundation for the kingdom of heaven. This is my political strategy. This is how things should work. And from that point on, the word has become real to me, and it's become a part of me. And when I think about politics and I think about where God has led us, I know I am where I'm supposed to be when the word becomes flesh, because of what I am doing. It's almost married. If that, and I hope that makes sense, is that I feel my purpose and I know I am where I'm supposed to be, because the alignment with the word and the alignment with my purpose, everything is synergistic. And I never felt that, you all, in Humana. I never felt that really as a regular church member. But something about having to stand on your own and lead people and search the word and digest it and then regurgitate it in order to bring people along with you, it changes you. And so that has been the most rewarding part, not leadership of anyone, but digestion of such a complicated document that has stood the test of time.
Thank you. So you have mentioned that you've been the youngest person, the only African-American female. What specific obstacles have arisen as a result of those special situations of being the youngest elected onto the Metro Council?
Constant challenge. So the favor of God. When I first got elected, I was appointed the chair of health and education for the entire city. And challenged left and right. I'm a master's degree person, and talk about you all going to medical school. I am in that chair now, challenging our director of public health for the entire city, CEOs of all of our major hospitals, and having these conversations. Excuse me. And so, in leadership, coming from that role, I remember having a conversation with someone, and they said, well, by all means, or what do you say? By all means, Councilwoman, I am a Harvard trained doctor. And I said, well, by all means, I did go to an HBCU that graduated the highest percentage of African-American doctors. So what's your point? And it gives you what I call a holy boldness, to be able to speak before people, to stand on your own. Thank you, Bible Bowl. Thank you. What was our basic Bible? Well, Bible Bowl was like our quick recall, excuse me, and our various debate teams and things that we had, because there's a level of audacity that sometimes we get as Christians, and you need that to survive in the corporate world. I did not know how to harness the holy audacity, not arrogance. Not conceitedness, not narcissism, but a holy audacity to know whose you are and why you're there, and to know that it's not about you, but it's about progressing and understanding that you are a part of a lineage of those that are here. Because what did Esther say? If they were simply just going to, if they were simply just going to make us slaves, I would have said nothing. But they are here to annihilate us. And so I was called for such a time as this. And if I don't speak, well, someone else will rise up. So I have not only a right, but I have an obligation. And regardless of the potential retribution or repercussions, they are nominal, because if I don't do what I'm supposed to do, either we could all be wiped out or someone else will rise up. But who knows what happens in the interim? So you almost take it without abandon, to an extent. And I have a saying, God's got me. I'm good. And so, Ms. Campbell, I've had everything. I remember my first death threat from a white supremacist group. I got the call from the FBI, and they said, Councilwoman, we need you to do blah, blah, blah. Your name has been posted up on this, really big white supremacist group. I was speaking about police brutality and reviewing our legislation. We're the home of Breonna Taylor. And I had some very candid thoughts about that. And I just remember, having that conversation and what it felt like to be scared, really, for my life. And it was only for a moment. And I thought, I have finally found the thing that I'm willing to die for. And if it be this, it will be this, but I refuse to be silent. And so it has opened so many doors. Fast forward, I have challenged the city in so many ways. We did not have any leadership in economic development that's African American. I don't have an MBA. But I will tell you, I sure do know how to calculate well, because I look at my student loans. I look at bills every day, and I can't tell you where it comes from. I told this young woman who I was mentoring. She said, Councilwoman, where'd you get this from? The most beautiful compliment came from a member of a magazine. He said, I grew up with you your whole life, and I see you on these conferences and news meetings with these CEOs and all these people, and you're challenging them, and they're like, yeah, you're right. And he said, I look at my wife and I'm like, where did she learn that? Because we know her whole life. Where did she pick that up from? And I tell people, it's almost like when the Lord told Moses, you go and I'll give you the words to say. Y'all, I can't tell you where I know it from, but I know it. And I know, but I can't tell you where I know it from. I can't tell you where I got it from, but it's in me. And I feel like the more that I move along where the Lord has taken me or where he wants me to go, and I step out on blind faith, it just comes. And the saying that he qualifies the call is real, y'all. So now I chair labor and economic development for the entire city with no business degree, a background in healthcare, and literally rock out. It's so funny because our top law firm here, one of the guys were like, "Oh, are you going against Councilwoman Dorsey?" I don't have a law degree, and this is a top law firm here, and they're like, "Oh, you better come prepared. Like she knows what she's doing," and it's sobering, you all. It is sobering to see what God will do when you just give it to him.
Councilwoman, thank you very much. We're down to our last couple questions because we're running out of time. But thank you so much for your. I think Ms. Jackson has a question for you. Then we'll have one final question.
I do. So what would you say to those who would say Adventists shouldn't even be involved in politics? We have no place in politics. What would you say?
Literally, I ran into that when I first ran. It was a little bit discouraging to get from some members, and the good old Adventist girl in me, y'all. I had all these Bible stories in me. They're all in me, and I said, remember when Mary and Joseph had traveled, and they I think it was for the festival, and they were going back home, and they thought Jesus was in the crowd with playing with the other kids, and they realized he was back at the temple, and they went back to find him and like, what you doing? And he said, didn't you realize I will be about my Father's business? And I have to remind people I'm about my Father's business. You can't tell me what lane that is, because where he's called me is where I'm supposed to be. So if he didn't call you to be in politics, well, he didn't call you to be there. But as for me, I am about my Father's business. This is my temple. This is where he's called me to come in and turn over some tables because things aren't happening right. It may be the church. The church is just as political as government. So, and I always remind people, most governments were started out of religious institutions. So please understand that it's really one and the same. So understand, when I sit down and I have my gavel in my hand, this is me being about my Father's business. You may want to go find yours. And that's exactly where I leave it.
Oh, Councilwoman, thank you so much. I'll let me ask you this question. I'll make a final comment. So tell us what's next. What's next for Councilwoman?
So I was reelected for another 4 years, but I do have some really unique options ahead of me. And I can't speak to them all right now, but I will just say, look out. There is one really unique option. And I'm going to put it like this. This is the beauty of being an Oakwoodite, and it has nothing to do with politics. I was sitting in, I think it was Mosley Auditorium, and I think his name is Milton Brown, came to speak to us, and he had patents. And for some reason that just rubbed in my spirit, y'all. I've never, where'd that come from? Why, where does wanting to be a patent owner? But recently I was able to make a pitch to the University of Louisville. We are about to enter into a partnership and do a citywide pilot that could potentially go national. And I don't know what's next, you all, but I know that I am just allowing myself to be used. I don't know if it's politics. And Daddy Edmonds, I'm at the point where I've stopped trying to predict what he wants to do with me. I make plans and then he changes them. I get all excited about the way I want to go, and then he pulls me somewhere else, and then I wouldn't change a thing. I don't know what's next, but I will tell you, for the first time, I am comfortable stepping out on faith without understanding what's next and literally trusting him without abandon. And that's the only thing I can tell you. But I've learned that when you trust him with no fear, there's nothing left but to fly.
Well, Councilman Dorsey, it has been such a delight to have you with us as someone who's known you teenage, as your youth director, coming there every year at the invitation
T-shirts.
at the invitation of Brenda Stoner, and having those socials and youth congresses. I'm very proud. Here's what I'd like to close. You may not have known this, but your father and my father had the same illness, passed away from the same thing. And I remember leaving my office in Nashville just before your father passed, and drove up to Louisville to see him and to pray with him. And shortly thereafter he passed. And what I want to tell you, I know your mom is proud. When I used to come to Magazine Street, I'd sit in the Sabbath school class with her and Marcia and Connie and the rest of them. But here's where I want to close. Your dad would be very proud, and so am I. So thank you so much for just inspiring us, and may the Lord bless you in your career.
Thank you.
Well, that was something. Thank you. We want to thank all of you for being a part of this First Sabbath series. Because of camp meeting, our next First Sabbath will not be until July the 23rd, where we will continue our institutional series, where we'll talk about our regional conference retirement plan with our executive director, Dr. William Cox. And then 2 weeks from that, we'll go back to First Sabbath. I'm so excited. We're going to do our first live First Sabbath, and it will be from the new office complex of ORCM and Breath of Life and Retirement. We're going to do that live from that $9 million, 32,000 square foot structure that when you see us there on August the 3rd, it will be debt free. That will house all the major ministries of the regional conferences. We look forward to seeing you there. In the meantime, enjoy your camp meetings and general conference. Ms. Campbell, pray us out, and we'll close.
All right, Lord, again, we thank you for the mighty things that you have done and how they've been manifested in so many of your people. We leave here encouraged, Lord, and inspired to see things that you have in store for us, Lord. Go with us, bring us together again soon. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Thanks to Elder Wintley Phipps and Councilwoman Keisha Dorsey. For Ms. Rebekah Jackson and Mrs. Courtney Campbell, I'm Elder Edmond. Thank you and good night.